Let's just set the scene here. You've landed in Australia. It's 2019. What's the first thing you do? Build a $4.5 million property portfolio in over 4 years? Just under 4 years, in fact. Probably not your first thought, but that's exactly what this guy here did. We're interviewing the amazing Gaurav. He's built an incredible property portfolio and leveraged and articulately purchased and gone about this in the right way to think about property investing. And he's very numbers driven. I'm not going to lie, he's very numbers focused. He thinks about property investing, and he doesn't really get emotional. He doesn't get emotionally attached to all of this. It's all about how can he keep pushing forward and making things happen. He's also not just in property. He also thinks about shares. He also thinks about share investing, ETFs, all of that kind of stuff. So this is a pretty wide-ranging conversation, but really it's this guy landed in Australia in 2019, and let's go through each property. He's bought 6 properties that are now worth $4.5 million plus, that are giving him a cash flow. Hey everyone, my name's Joe Tucker, and together with Jeff Miles, we created Oz Property Investors, Australia's largest property investment community with over 77,000 members. And each week we interview top property experts and unpack their wisdom so that you guys can just chillax and listen to the insights. This session is no different. How has someone gone from migrant to millionaire, literally a millionaire, in under 4 years? It is incredible what you can do if you put the effort in. This guy did not come from a lot. You know, he didn't arrive in Australia with millions of dollars. No, it's been a hard-ass effort, and he's put the effort in, and he's gotten the results for it. So let's jump on in. So you land in Australia. What did that look like for you? What were you researching? What tools and like education things did you kind of fall into? Because to be honest, I my property investing journey took a little bit of time because I was spending a lot of time. My first start was like the house and land property spriggers. Oh my gosh, I can save money on tax. Oh my gosh, I got these guaranteed rents. These things sound awesome. Like, how did you like bypass that and then no, we're gonna go down here first?
I guess one of the benefits of having spent some time and worked back in India was that we learned some bit of investing, and house and land package or buying apartments was something that was not favorable even there. I think I even shared in our chat that we still have an apartment unfinished. It's been about 12 years. So,
was that
so
11 years
can't do
ago?
it.
12 years
11,
unfinished. Incredible.
Yeah. That company has gone out of business, so yeah, really can't do it. So we got into house, and Brisbane was quite reasonable back then, right, when we moved in. So first purchase was in Brisbane. September 19 was the settlement. We bought it for 545K, and the deposit I think we put back then was about 12%, so 65K. It was our PPOR from 2019 September till about February 2022. And that's where we built the portfolio and then moved on to the PPOR, which was number 6, and we'll just talk to that as well.
So how did you even kind of realize, like, yes, you had the experience back in India with your off the plan that hadn't completed, but how did you get to Australia and know that it kind of worked in a similar, like, were there some books that you read, or were there some resources you kind of podcasts you listened to, or was that, and you just made a plan and took an action?
Yeah, so after the first purchase, we did some renovations in that house because we had to do the kitchen. So got that experience as well of remodeling the kitchen and the finishing, etc. So that took about some time, and then we started interacting with a lot of people on Facebook, etc. Over the years, over the next 1 year. So we didn't buy anything in 2020. We came across a buyer's agent, Weber Rusty, and he was someone connected to our LinkedIn, and that's how we came across. And we thought, yeah, this is good. We had our property value, our home did not grow much back then because Brisbane was moving very slow from about 2019 till about beginning of 2021. But we had a decent deposit, so we thought we will do that. There was a deal available before this, which we didn't buy. So I'll just talk about that as well in the lessons learned. So we really, I think, learned a lot from Rusty back then on how he could assist us. That was the only purchase that we had through BA. And then we also met a mortgage broker back then who was very educated on how we could structure the deal by maximizing our equity. So we used the deposit to bring down the loan for our Brisbane owner occupier. And that's how we could maximize the deposit. So the value from 545 had grown to, I believe, 600 when we made the first purchase. So we paid down 60K and then borrowed 80K.
So funny, isn't it? That's so funny that the broker, like the best way to get access to borrowing is to pay, rather than have more saving, is to pay down the debt to unlock you to be able to buy the next one.
So yeah, so this purchase was in Upper Hunter region. We purchased this with the help of Rusty, 464K. The current value has grown to about 700K. The rent back then was 430. It's now currently rented at 610 per week.
Wow.
Well, it's interesting that you outgrew your professionals because I think that that's what a lot of people do, but then they just stop. So what did that look like for you? What were the action steps that you kind of took how did you recognize you outgrew your person, and then what are the steps that you took?
So we'll probably talk through subsequent purchases. So next purchase was in Victoria. We were still the same broker back then, and this was done through. So we paid a cash deposit of 30K into the owner occupied, and then extracted equity of 51K. And this purchase was 340K back then, rented for 330K back, 330 per week back then. And then now it's sitting at 450, and 450 is the weekly rent. So yeah, we have moved to different professionals at different times, but we have been very clear in communications. The reason why we cannot move is because we have outgrown or they can't work for various reasons.
So sorry, you don't need to share maybe that, but like, when do you know? So from someone else listening, how do I know that I've outgrown my professional?
You need to ask, right? So you just don't take no for an answer, right? Like I said to Jeff, we don't take no for an answer. When we were doing our number 6, we had really reached a point that we had to go to a tier 3 lender, and the deal was done between 2 different brokers. Like one broker had done the equity extraction out of the investment property, and the other one had done the loan for the tier 3 lender. You just work with them, right? It's your portfolio. You are the captain of the ship. You need to run it. Great professionals, take advice from everyone, from every book that you can read in the corner. Take advice, apply it to your circumstance, and grow.
How do you think about lenders, mortgage, insurance on the PPR, or both? Do you advocate? How do you think about it in general?
So in our case, we had the first 3 purchases: the Brisbane owner occupied, the Upper Hunter investment property, and the regional WIC property in LMI. There's a time and place for everything, right? And it also depends on your circumstances. Now, we've had the great Charlie Weller on this podcast saying that you need to put 30% deposit, right? We could have done 30% deposit, right? Would have taken probably 10 years to build that. We had incomes, we had the cash flow support, so we did it. I mean, if I still had the deposit, and I'll probably give a reason there. If I still had the deposit back then, I would have probably invested the balance in the next one, right? And made 2 separate investments, or made 3 investments out of my cash, right? You need to get more door in the market so that you can get your portfolio growing. LMI is a cost to do business.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I think about it as well. avoid it if you can, but embrace it when you have to. And if that means you can get into the market sooner and the market's growing at 3% a month or 2% or 1% or 5%, and there's no way you're going to be able to save that money faster than it's growing. So it's a mathematical decision of, cool, I'll pay the $8,000 over the next 30 years because I don't have the extra $50,000 that's needed to avoid the LMI. But also, you're not there. You're not going to be in that situation going forward forever. I mean, the LMI is there forever. You do have to pay that down once you've done it, but you can pay down more of a deposit later down the journey.
Yeah, and I think that's what we will need to be careful of. So when we talk about the subsequent purchases, you need to have a balance in your portfolio. You can't live off life of a 10% equity, right? You need to grow that. Now that has to come through various ways. Now, when we did the first purchase, we bought an LMI, but when we did the refinance and the value had grown some 30 or thousand, we put the deposit, we put some cash back so that we can get under 80%. And then subsequently we could extract equity. So there is a time and place for everything. There's no right or wrong answer in the world of investing. People will think that you're silly for a long, long period of time until you're proven right? I mean, look at this, right? Someone coming into Australia in 4.5 years, 5 years, we build this and it's happening, right? We've made a seat on the table on the biggest property show. So do it, guys.
This is an interesting question that because right now we talk a lot about property and we don't talk too much about shares. So I think there's a lot of questions like, how do you think about, what kind of ratios are you kind of thinking about when it comes to, I'm going to have, 50% of my cash allocated to property, 50% to shares, or is there a sweet spot for you, or too much or too little? How do you think about it? Don't need to give 100% numbers, of course.
Seek advice on that one for sure. But
yeah, definitely seek advice. But I can tell you what I believe. What we believe, I should say, not me, is you need to have a balance of both. So when you start, like we have, I mean, if I had been 20 or 25, it would have probably been different. We would have had more index funds because of borrowing. But if you have more time on hand, I think index funds work quite well because of compounding. If you have less time, you migrate into a country like us, you need to build the funds quickly, which is exactly what we have done. I mean, I'll give you an example, and you might just blow away with this. If you start at the age of 0, like on day one, $1,000 compounding for 18 years, that changes to 540K, right? Now, if you leave those 540,
$1,000 a year,
a month.
Oh, a month. Okay. Yep.
$1,000 a month, and you can change zeros, right? If you do $1,000 a year, it will be 54,000 or whatever. But if you do $1,000 a month, 18 years, 540K. If you leave those $540,000, don't invest anything, enjoy your life. What would be the amount at the end of 42 years? Anyone can pull up a compounding calculator for me and do numbers at 9%, please. That's the regular rate of return for any reasonable index fund. I think it was last I checked about more than 20 mil or something.
Yeah, the only challenge I have with, and not just with shares, with property, is the sequencing risk. Because if you, and I'm not saying anybody do this, like somebody bought in Perth in 2014, like right, and you'd have to be unlucky to kind of pick the tops. I'm cherry picking examples to illustrate an example where it may not work so well. Let's just say you buy, I don't know, you buy at the top of COVID, and yes, you can dollar cost average and all that sort of stuff. But it's the same with buying a property market. Like if you bought Darwin in 2010, right now you're probably lucky if your property's worth more than what it was when you bought it. So that's my only kind of contention that with any kind of investing and using those, yes, it could go to that, but just be mindful that it might not. And if it doesn't, then you need to kind of sort of look at that plan along. Any investing, I don't think, should ever be set and forget. Passive investing, passive income is a bit of a misnomer for mine.
No, not really, and that's why I said it can't be either or. It has to be a combination of both, right? So if you're young, you start with index funds because you can't do borrowing. You build your war chest around deposit, and then you got 540K, you can put some deposit. and then build around it. So why do you want a 3% return in bank, right? If you've got 5-7 years for that money to grow, let it compound. Now, maybe don't do all of it. Maybe do 50-50. Do some bit of savings in cash in your savings account and some bit in the market. Your money's still working for you. And people might argue that you would have a CGT at the end of the event. Fair enough. You would have a CGT in the investment property. You won't make rental returns, right? If you buy a first property in the current market, you can't get rental return.
But how did you even sort of then start to think about, like, you just sort of took, it sounds like you have a very methodical process. It's like, okay, well, my first, and I did this with somebody, I tagged a couple of brokers and said to them, the first step you need to do is go and reach out to these brokers and come back to us. So is that you created a step-by-step process, and then it's like, if this step, it's almost like one of those charts where you go to the step process, and if that step fails, if it's a yes or a no, you go to that other step. Is that the way you kind of think about your property investing?
So one is the area identification, and the method that we followed was we didn't go through to one state. So when we were looking at the regional Victoria, we were also looking at Adelaide suburbs, and we couldn't get through. So that's been part, right? I mean, the option was either buy in Adelaide or not buy in Adelaide or buy nowhere, right? So we always look at 2 or 3 areas when we were doing the research, not just one market, because you really can't time everything, right? They might not accept your offer. So we got that ready, and I think one of the other person I would like to credit is Scott Agate. He really had some good sessions with you guys on how to reach out to the agents. So we used to send out emails to all the agents in the area, how they're doing. We have finance ready. Our finance was always difficult because of equity extraction and always got delayed or extended. But I think advertising your requirement is always great. You get on the dealer board, and then you probably call them, a few of them every week, and just get through it. In terms of the area identification, we really looked at how the incomes are growing with the ABS stats, and also the owner-occupied portion. But I think sometimes you also need to look at the government policy changes, right? Like, for example, Gold Coast Council, which is one of our purchases subsequently, some of the suburbs have really not as significant as owner-occupied portion, but there was a significant policy change made back in 2019, 2020, when they allowed the non-permanent residents to move into Gold Coast as a region. So the council price is really short, the rent is short. So you also need to be mindful of what's happening in terms of the policies so that you can tie the data back to what's happening on ground. You don't need to be there, but you just need to build your analysis around that.
Yeah, I think it's often overlooked where people get too data focused on just to one little suburb and not thinking about the macro of where that suburb sits, because there are areas and suburbs out there that have incredible data. It looks like incredible data on the surface of it, but it's not factored in against the entire region. And you can see it's like, oh wow, that suburb looks great on paper, but that's just one area. Everything else around it looks pretty not so great. And then you look deeper, that nothing's happening in that area. It's not going to be a long term. It's just a little blip in the radar. It might do something in the short term, but long term, it's not going to give you the numbers that you need it to be. So did you call council and stuff? Like, did you have conversations with the council people to say, hey, I see that this thing's going on. Is that actually happening? Is it delayed? Or how do you do that research?
Yeah, so call up the council just to understand that. I think what also worked in our favor is because we had 2 people working together, both were involved, myself and my wife, and big kudos to her on being on this journey. We kind of set up a method that she would do X steps, maybe by emailing agents every fortnight or giving them call or sending out offers. So if anyone on this journey really wants to learn something about this, is build knowledge with your family, right? Have your date nights around talking about properties. We have some serious conversations about how we can do the next steps, how we build this further. Your best team is your family. You need to get them involved on the journey, And it's important they are combined with you. I couldn't have done this myself. It's no mean feat, right? It has to be a combined effort, not just in terms of income, right? You can't do this on a substantial or reasonable income. It has to happen. You have to grow. Our incomes have grown, our portfolio has grown, but our knowledge also has grown in this area. That's how you build your portfolio around that.